So welcome to the My Florida Green podcast.
Happy to be here.
Yes, so today we're going to talk a little bit about something that plagues our nation, insomnia. How we can help maybe with medical marijuana and some other things potentially. So let's talk a little bit about insomnia and just what goes into that.
Absolutely. Like you said, insomnia is plaguing like everybody nowadays. I mean, it's one of those things, either insomnia got you because, of the stress of the day-to-day life, everyone's working, everyone's, dealing with all the things that are going on in the country and in the world right now. It makes it really hard to calm down, unwind, turn off at the end of the day. And so then it's hard to, get to sleep and have that good night. Or they're dealing with, some kind of medically based insomnia that's keeping them up at night. And then that just makes everything that you have to go through the day harder. And so it's like it's catching you either at one end or the other. And it just turns into this vicious cycle that everyone gets stuck in.
You're right. And in either way, it's like you're pulling bricks all day, whether it's physically with all your steps or mentally trying to get your job done. And there's a couple of different variances to that, right? Like some people have a hard time falling asleep. Some people don't have a hard time falling asleep, but wake up in a few hours and can't get back to sleep. Either one, super annoying. And
absolutely. Either way, you're not getting a good night rest.
Detriment. It adds up. It's small. You lose a couple hours here, you lose a couple hours there. It just builds up continuously until you're just drained of any mental energy and you're just left wondering, why am I so tired?
Yeah, why do I feel like a zombie now?
Exactly. I mean, insomnia is one of those things that's really like, it's a lifestyle problem, right? There's no part of your life that it's not going to affect.
Exactly. Well, and speaking of lifestyle, I think before we dive into the whole, medical marijuana side of it, let's talk a little bit about lifestyle changes that can maybe help with, a lack of sleep, or help with getting better sleep. So, what are some of the things that first things that come to mind when you...
first thing that comes to mind is we're all, glued to our cell phones, to electronics, whether it's his phone or the TV, the computer. It's just, we all have stimulation going 24/7 right now. And we have to remember that these things have, blue light, these things have the EMP that just activate and put our brain in a state of activity where it's just processing and it's turned on, it's going. And so, purposefully making sure to, start shutting these things down a good 20 to 30 minutes before you try and shut your brain down, right? And it's going to be a lot more effective and a lot easier to sit there and shut your brain down rather than just try to run yourself into a wall and then roll over, throw your phone down and, try and pass out. It's really not a realistic thing for anybody.
I like what you said about the blue light too, because, when people don't understand is, our brains are dialed into a circadian rhythm. Right. And when the sun starts to go down, well, it triggers our brain to say, hey, guess what? Get ready for bed because it's coming up soon.
Yeah.
But the problem is we have all these electronic devices now and even LED lights. They put out a blue light that's our brain. It tricks our brain into thinking it's sunlight is what it is. And chemical reactions happen to make you stay awake and more alert because that's what our brain to do. Problem is that hurts. So, I know one small little way to mitigate that throughout the day anyway is put your device on the nighttime mode. It'll actually make your screen a little bit kind of like an orangish kind of tint to it. It may not be the true tone colors that you're used to, but your brain will be happier by the end of the evening. So worked up. And not to mention all the content we consume. I mean, like you said, overstimulated. Our brain absorbs everything that we see. And we are getting access to so much information all at once. No wonder why we're anxious and staying awake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when, we used to sit back and read books and, slowly process things, we would, sit there and read things 1 or 2 or 3 times because your brain has to sit there and it focuses on different things. And so you can sit there and read the same thing. Well, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. You're sitting there watching pictures and watching movies, and your brain is working so hard to process all of that stuff. It needs that chunk of time when you're done to sit there and finish processing before it's ready to be done.
Right.
And a lot of people have that disconnect. They're sitting there like, oh, well, I'm done. My brain's done. And it's not necessarily how it works.
Exactly.
Not at all. And then speaking of lifestyle changes, a big one is definitely being mindful of what you eat or drink those little hours before bed, as that can heavily impact keeping you up at night or even waking up multiple times throughout the night, as just with drinking alone, drinking a couple cups of water, or you think that you're feeling a little parched, it's going to haunt you because you're going to wake up in the middle of the night having to go to the bathroom, make a little visit. And then even with eating, that activates your gut biome. So now they're put basically into activity while you're trying to sleep. And that just puts a little bit of a wrench in the gears of your body trying to do other things or trying to get that restorative natural sleep.
Yeah. And you know, another big one too, in that same vein, caffeine. I mean, caffeine can be really dangerous. And look at all the different caffeine drinks that are out now. I mean, just the last time that I looked, it was like Monster, Rockstar, all kinds of different ones, right? And they're loaded with this caffeine, and caffeine stays in your system up to 12 hours or more.
Yeah.
You know, even though you don't have that caffeine buzz, it's kind of like getting you awake for the day. You may not have that, but it's still circulating in your system, and you're not going to necessarily sleep well if you have too much caffeine too late.
Exactly. A lot of people don't realize that, and they'll go for the caffeine and think, oh, it's not that bad, especially the people that'll go for that secondary one, maybe like at lunch or in the afternoon. Those are the worst. Those are the ones that are going to kill you because, like you said, that you don't feel the jittery caffeine feel for that, 9 to 12 hours, but that's what's in your system. That's what your body is processing. And so you're sitting there then at midnight after you had, your energy drink at 3 or 5 p.m. going, why can't I sleep? And it's like, well,
I've definitely been a victim.
Yeah, well, at some point, and just not realizing it because you're just trying to get through your day. And I get how it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're not sleeping well. You need the caffeine to function throughout your day. Maybe you got a challenging job, whatever the case. You got to function. You get through your day, and you're ready to go to bed. Logistically because it's evening, but your brain is saying, "No, I've got way too much to go on."
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So watching that caffeine intake can be really, and I know you might have to grind it out throughout a day to kind of get through it, but once you kind of get out and get that out of that cycle, it can really help.
And if you're really needing that, energy boost in the afternoon, one thing that's always going to be a better alternative to caffeine is protein. A lot of places are getting better with those little protein pack snacks. You can get, those little things of dried fruits or nuts. Those little protein boosts are going to be a way better alternative because that won't take your body nearly as long to sit there and process, but it'll still give you a nice little energy boost.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Adam.
Yeah. And then another one too is I think it's important to be cautious of over-the-counter, medications or supplements, if you will. Melatonin's one that a lot of people use, and I know there's kind of a lot of controversy over melatonin, like if you take it for too long, will your body stop producing it? And generally speaking, I think it's important for people to know melatonin is a hormone. Okay. And although, short term, it can be okay to take, the downside is when you start doing it long term, anytime you're starting to mess with your hormones, that can create problems down the line. And that's not something you want to really do for too long. So you just got to be really cautious about that.
Absolutely. I mean, when you start thinking about it in that light, when you start taking over-the-counter melatonin for too long, basically you're doing like a self-inflicted hormone therapy.
Yeah. I mean, and then when you look at like the human body itself, it's already an intricate balance.
Yeah.
And tossing a little bit of hormones into that, it's not going to really help balance out the scale, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen from that, and you don't want to, you don't want to mess up, something that could cause the issues down the line. So let's kind of move into some medical marijuana aspects. Like, so why would medical marijuana even help somebody? Like, what are some of the aspects of it that could help get you to sleep, stay asleep?
Well, I think everybody is, quick to know that THC helps everybody sleep. I think it's a little more intricate than that. THC is really, really great at helping people fall asleep. I mean, even that, you still got to kind of get into the nitty gritty a little bit more. We know there are 2 different strains of the plant when it comes to THC, because the sativa is going to be far more uplifting. For a lot of people, that's not going to make you sleepy at all. And so we're always going to lean into the indica, or, around here we like to say indica couch. It tends to be a lot more body heavy, tends to be a lot more soporific, a lot more sleep inducing. And so when it comes to the THC, yeah, good indica THC will really help you fall asleep. But at that point, we've already made a couple of clarification. And then, like we said earlier, some people have the problem falling asleep, but then there's the flip side of insomnia where maybe you fall asleep just fine, but then you're up every hour and a half or 2 hours a night. And the THC is great at falling asleep, but you don't want to have to sit there and take it every hour and a half, 2 hours every time you're up. And that's where, you can get into some of the other minor cannabinoids. CBN is a minor cannabinoid that's fabulous for really helping you get into your REM cycle, finish off your REM cycles, help balance out that circadian rhythm you were talking about a little bit more. And so if your problem is staying asleep all night, leaning into that CBN side of things can really, really helps finish off that REM cycle, get you finishing those deep restful nights like you need to. And that's one thing I love about really getting in and getting into the science and the research of marijuana, because it's easy to just, like I said, throw it at the wall and be like, THC helps you sleep. But it's so much more intricate than that.
Very.
Yeah, it's very nuanced. And I think that's why I love having these conversations, in this setting and even with our one-on-ones with our patients, because, there is a lot of perception of what cannabis is and what it can do. And then there's the science, and it's important for people to understand the different parts of the plant so they can get the most out, And another thing that I wanted to kind of just touch on were terpenes. Terpenes is another, area of cannabis that's just not talked about enough, I think, and it's not as well understood, I think, by a lot of people. But what is a terpene? So a terpene is a natural oil that forms on a plant, and many plants form terpenes, and it's to protect the plant. But and what influences the kind of terpene that cannabis can create is, the sunlight, temperatures, what goes into the soil, all those things will influence the kind of terpenes it can create. And there's a number of different ones that have different medicinal benefits that we can consume. So, and those terpenes will be infused into your products. So if you get products with terpenes in it, it'll just be infused in it. Terpenes can be added botanically is what it's called, and it's actually through fruits and herbs. There's certain fruits and herbs that will give you the same effect if you consume it with your products. And there's a number of terpenes that are really good for sleep. Like linalool is one of them.
That's going to be the major one for sleep. Pretty much any indica that you see or any hybrid that they really like to post as being good for sleep is going to be really linalool heavy. We know linalool comes a lot from like lavender, birch, rosewood, laurel trees. And so linalool is just one of those things that's very relaxing, very calming, definitely gets you nice and sleepy. Another one is neranol. Yes, I'm hoping to say that right. All these terpene names are just exercises in speech pronunciation. But neranol is from tea tree, jasmine, basil. Another great one that's very sleepy, very soporific. And then there's the
terpene, right? Terpene.
Yes.
Terpene apples. Yeah. Very interesting.
Surprise, actually.
Spread. Yeah.
Apples, nutmeg, I think ginger. I think that's the one that I associate with like those warm, fuzzy feels for winter, like apple cider, apple pie, that kind of thing. And so that's like the curl up and get warm by the fire to fall asleep terpene to me.
They call it a comfort food for a reason. It's really nice. But yeah, so I think it's important for people to understand that terpenes exist and that can really create a more profound effect when you're consuming your products. So, when you go to your dispensaries, you can kind of ask about the different terpenes and the different products, and that can really help you curate what would work best. Because again, like we said, very nuanced, a lot of different subtle differences here, but when you start to really zero in, it makes it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like I said, sleep is a lifestyle problem. When your sleep falls out of whack, everything starts getting affected. And so it's like once you can find something where even you can start to kind of put your sleep back on the rails, start getting those restful nights back under your belt, everything will start seeming so much more manageable.
Yeah.
Start falling back into place. Everything just becomes a little bit more doable.
Yeah. And we see it all the time here. That's what I think is just one of the most rewarding things of what we do here is when people come back for their 7-month follow-up, and especially the ones that were struggling with sleep. Because you could see it on someone that has not been sleeping. When they come back in 7 months, they're smiling. They're more bright. They got color back in their face. Everything about them is just starting to change. That's incredibly rewarding.
Wait.
Another thing another aspect of this too, because what other things that can keep people awake at night is, pain, if you're in a lot of pain, anxiety, is another key one that can keep you up. And the beautiful thing about this plant is it can help with both of those. It can help with pain, anxiety, and help you get to sleep.
Absolutely.
So it really kind of helps with all, checks the buckets of things that could be interfering with that sleep cycle. So it's kind of nice.
It's definitely the good trifecta.
Right. I think it's something that we bring up in almost every single episode is how wonderfully versatile this plant is.
Yeah.
How many different things that it addresses. You might have to tweak the way that you're doing the intake or, like I said, lean into different parts of the plant to help with different things, but it is so versatile. There is definitely a way to use it to help with what you need.
So now, and the other thing too is, I think we should talk a little bit about some of the ways to implement these things, right? So we talked about some of the different compounds that can help you sleep. So say I'm a patient and I'm fairly new to this. I go to a dispensary. I know this information now. Now where do I start?
I mean, first things first, I would say start off with edibles. And with edibles, our age-old saying is low and slow. And then what I mean by that is usually take about 10 to 5 milligrams, especially if it's your first time. And generally an hour before bed is when you want to take it, as that'll help start to activate within your system and help you get a long, restful sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And and then besides edibles, you also do have the sublingual tinctures. And with the tinctures, they're more specified if you have issues with falling asleep, as the window for activation is about 30 minutes after you put it under the tongue and keep it there. And that helps a lot for anybody just having that specific issue of falling asleep versus just waking up in the middle of the night with the edible users.
Absolutely. And edibles can take up to 2 hours for some people, so about an hour I think is a great advice. And just a kind of a compliment to any of the THC-based products that you might experiment with. And again, just remember, all of this is going to be an experiment. Everyone's a little different. Some people have really high tolerances naturally, as we talked about in a previous episode with talking about the redhead gene, and Adam's our resident expert on that. He definitely has that gene, which people have higher tolerances there. And then some people are really sensitive, only just a little bit. So even cutting your edible into quarters down to 2.5 milligrams, that can be effective for some people. So really just understanding that piece. But the other part of it too is maybe incorporating CBD during the day, right? Because CBD, can help with a number of things, inflammation. So if you have inflammation-related pain, that can help. Anxiety, because it can help you to regulate your cortisol spikes, your stress hormone that kicks in when you get stressed. Even help with blood pressure, blood sugar regulation. But taking your CBD during the day, because it's non-psychotropic, you can function perfectly throughout the day, nice and calm and balanced, and then do your THC at night. That can actually, the two together is a powerful combination because it helps to refuel your endocannabinoid system, which is essentially a series of receptors that help you balance all your other major systems. So that can be a great powerful.
And I also think there's a little hidden known benefit when you do cycle CBD throughout the day and THC at nighttime to get that good night rest is when you do take that CBD throughout the day, you're actually refreshing your receptors. So when you actually do onboard your THC at night, they're more readily available, and you'll feel that THC much more onset versus more like a delayed reaction.
Right.
And the receptors just aren't getting as worn out over time. They're staying rejuvenated. They're staying, at kind of maximum functioning capacity. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, one of those little known things that we like to throw at, especially the more experienced users that are having trouble with like tolerance and things like that. Or like you said, the people with the redhead gene that are really struggling to try and keep it in a manageable dose. Having that CBD just to make sure that your receptors are absorbing and utilizing as much THC as they can really, really be helpful. Another thing too for our high tolerance people is maybe having to stack things at night. Maybe they're taking the tincture and the gummy, so that way the tincture can help them fall asleep and then the gummy helps them stay asleep. And I always just want to encourage people to don't be afraid to stack if that's what you need. If, you're taking something and it's not enough, don't be afraid to go more. I have so many people, so many patients that come in and they're like, well, it's not quite working yet. It's starting to, but I'm just afraid to take more because I'm afraid of being too high. And I'm always like, why? Get high and you will fall asleep.
Exactly.
You're going to be unconscious for most of it.
and the beauty of it, right, is to say you wake up and you're still a little bit psychotropic. You feel it, you're kind of groggy still. Well, a little known fact is that if you take enough CBD, it'll reverse it. And it's typically about a 5-to-1 ratio for every milligram of THC had.
And my thing is if you've gone 2 or 3 or 4 nights without sleep, that foggy state of brain that you will not be able to clear out of and get functioning is way worse than any kind of head fog you would get from being, high off of marijuana. And so I'm always like, just be high long enough to fall asleep, and then that way you're not mind mud all day. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And another really great strategy too is some people, can get to sleep and then they might wake up after a few hours and still got that 3 to 4 hour window, perhaps, before they got to go to work or get up for the day, and make a vape pen can be great for that.
Absolutely.
And that sit on your bedside, just kind of just taking a few puffs of that can maybe help you get to sleep in the middle of the night too.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you bring up the 3 to 4 hour window, possibly a little bit less, as the vape pen's very specific for that. As if you decide to take another tincture, another edible, you might sleep through your alarm.
Exactly. You don't want to overdose yourself, and that's why we said the education is important. You need to know which methodologies to use when, and which parts of the plant to lean into for which symptoms, and so that's why we have these conversations. That's why it's important to do these. But you're absolutely right. When you have that little bit of window when you wake up and just have a couple more hours before your alarm goes off, that's when when you take the tincture, you take the edible, it's gonna be too much and push you too far. And so that's where you're gonna really just need kind of that inhalable just to kind of come in, soothe things, and then work out of your system nice and fast so you can still wake up.
Yeah, that's important. I think it's important to know. And just for those folks out there too, I know there's a lot of folks that are worried about their lung health, and maybe they don't want to vape, or, you don't want to, dealing with the flower, smoking a joint, or even, packing a bowl. I know that's kind of difficult in the middle of the night. So some of this not ideal. But another route, there's 2 other routes that are really safe for your lungs that could still achieve the same effect. One of them is getting, they have inhalers that have THC in it. And you can get THC and CBD ratios as well. And they're very controllable. I mean, it literally it is an asthma inhaler just with THC.
That's why there's no combustion, there's no heat to it, so there's no irritant or inflammatory. It's all just clean, soothing vapor, like you said, like an asthma inhaler would be.
Yeah, so that's safe for your lungs and can get the job done. And then there's another device if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it. It's called a dryer vape. My man Roger introduced me to that. Thank you, Roger. But yeah, I tell you, the dryer vape is great because what it does is it's just a little mechanical device, a little smaller than your phone typically, and you pack just a little container with a little bit of herb in there, and then what it does is it'll heat it up to a specific temperature just under the combustion. So you're just getting the vapor and all the healing properties of it. There's an actual chart of temperatures you can heat it up to. If you heat it up to a certain temperature, you can get straight CBN out of it, or primarily CBN from it, which is great for sleep, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So there's a number of ways you could do this while still being able to protect your lungs. If you're really health conscious, or if you just maybe have weak lungs from smoking early on and you stop. It's okay. Like there's different ways, and that's why, again, like just reinforce what you said. Having these discussions and educating people on what they can do to get the relief they need, because then when people are starting to sleep better, they live better. Right?
It's a compound effect.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So, any final thoughts before we check out of this episode?
I don't know. I'd like to say just the age-old adage of our CEO and owner: it's better to be high than it is to be low.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Absolutely. Do not be afraid to get high enough to fall asleep, please.
Yeah. So why wait?
You wish you did.
Exactly. So why wait? Look, go to myfloatergreen.com, click Get Started, fill out the paperwork. We're happy to see you, and we'll definitely help you get educated and get you some sleep. Because, man, when we sleep better, everything else starts to fall into place, like you said. So, appreciate you guys as always. It's awesome having these conversations, and I love getting the word out to people. So, till next episode.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.